Chinese President Xi Jinping says China and Germany should seek common ground. He made the comments in a meeting with the German Chancellor. Olaf Scholz is on a three-day visit to China and has met with President Xi in Beijing. It's his first trip to the country since Germany launched a strategy to avoid overdependence on China. Xi says relations between the two will continue to grow as long as both sides respect each other. Well, let's talk about that with DW's Richard Walker, our chief international editor. Fabian Kretschmer also joins us from Beijing. I'll start with you, Fabian. How'd that meeting go between the Chinese and German leaders?
Yeah, first of all, it is quite remarkable that Olaf Scholz secured rather extensive talks with both Xi Jinping and Li Qiang. They last for several hours. Li Qiang, that's the Prime Minister of China, and the rhetoric that he was greeted with by Xi Jinping was quite friendly, and that was also to be expected. But if you look at the interests between those two countries, they are really diverging. Politically, it's very obvious with China leaning towards Russia, but also leaning with closer ties towards North Korea and even Iran. So there are some friction. Then in terms of trade, China wants to keep Germany as an investor and also as a market and a trading partner. However, at the same time, Xi Jinping right now is doubling down on manufacturing, on excessive industrial policy and subsidies that basically threaten Germany's economy. So there's also some friction. So I would say really those structural issues are really very hard to overcome, and that is really the main topic of the meeting.
OK. Richard, what is going to be top of Scholz's list?
Yeah, well, I think picking up on some of the points that Fabian just made there, I mean, he mentioned China's relationship with Russia. This is certainly a major concern for the Germans, in that they see China very much as kind of enabling Russia's war against Ukraine, which, of course, is dragging on and on. And last time Scholz went to China, I was with him on that trip, and he extracted a statement from, or wording from, Xi Jinping, which he saw as something of a positive, saying that you can't make threats with nuclear weapons. So this was interpreted as very much a kind of criticism of Vladimir Putin, who's used nuclear threats in the Ukraine war quite a bit. Recently, those threats are very much back. So I think that the Germans would be looking for some wording from Xi Jinping on that again. But also, Scholz's message to Xi Jinping is going to be, you know, you are helping Russia. You may not be providing them with the drones that Iran's giving them or the missiles that North Korea is giving the Russians, but you're giving a lot of economic support, diplomatic support, and what they call kind of basically sort of enabling dual-use technologies, the kind of technologies that could potentially be used in some way in this conflict, and saying that this really harms Germany's and Europe's core interests, that this is a major war in Europe, and China is playing what they see as a destructive part in that. He'll also want to talk about Iran and Israel, and certainly he'll want to talk about trade, the issues that Fabian just mentioned there. We've just heard that China's economic growth is bouncing back. Well, the West sees this as being built on excessive manufacturing of cheap electric vehicles, wind turbines, all sorts of technologies that are very important in the development of the economy, the green economy in future years. And these are major threats also to Germany's economy. The European Union is doing investigations into these things to look at whether it needs to start imposing restrictions. Olaf Scholz will be hoping to find some way to avoid that, I think.
Fabian, do you think we will get clear statements from the Chinese this time on this trip as far as those hot topics go?
Yeah, so maybe first on Ukraine, I mean, I think it would be naive to expect anything that goes beyond the usual rhetoric, because just 1 week ago, Sergei Lavrov, the Russian foreign minister, was here. He was also greeted by Xi Jinping with a very friendly rhetoric, and probably paving the way for a very soon visit by Vladimir Putin here to China. That has not been confirmed yet, but that is what is expected. And if you also look at what is talked in background talks, for example, when I talk to diplomats here, that also is not very hopeful that China will actually use its influence over Russia to help pressure the country to end the war. I don't think that is going to happen. For the trade frictions, yes, I expect there will be small concessions, for example, small opening ups, but not the structural problem. I think this will not be resolved.
OK, and as far as Germany trying to de-risk from China at the same time that we're hearing from the Chinese leadership that they want to grow this relationship, how does that work?
Yeah, well, Olaf Scholz's people are saying that, you know, they are trying to do the work of diversifying Germany's kind of economic contacts. They've had lots of meetings with leaders from Southeast Asian countries recently, that Scholz has been looking for alternative sources of the kind of raw materials that the German businesses get from China. But if you look at the delegation that's travelling with Scholz on this trip, you've got leaders of big car companies, chemical companies, a lot of the really massive sort of core of the German economy. And a lot of these bosses, they're increasing their investments in China. Last year, in fact, was a record year for investment by German companies in China. So it's not at all clear that this strategy is really being pursued with full clarity by everyone.
Interesting. Richard Walker, thank you very much for the analysis. Fabian Kretschmer, thank you for chiming in from Beijing.